Global politics are part of the conversation today, including potential impacts on demand for U.S. ag products. There are some major elections for our neighbor and number one trade partner coming up very soon. And let's talk about a weird start to the 2024 planting season and go rootworm hunting with Iowa State.
Live from the globe via Farm Journal Studios, this is AgriTalk. This morning we'll begin with a conversation with Dan Basse from AgResource. Then it's Ken Ferrie from Crop Tech Consulting. Later, Ashley Dean from Iowa State University Extension. Directly following the news, Greg Henderson from Drovers. I'm the handsome newsman Davis Michelson. And now, welcome the host of AgriTalk, Chip Lorre.
All right, Davis. Hey, thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful day in the middle of the country.
Samesies. Down here, the sun is so bright today. Gorgeous.
Oh, it is gorgeous. What? I mean, it's going to be warm but not hot. It's the sun is going to be shining most of the day. Unfortunately, it all leads to some storms tonight and into tomorrow morning.
Well, you had to go there, didn't you? You couldn't just leave it at what a beautiful sunshiny day.
I'm not going to. Hey. The reality is reality, dude. You got to deal with it.
We don't sugarcoat it here on AgriTalk, do we?
That's right.
Real bullets. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, does it sound a little dangerous to go rootworm hunting?
It does sound actually a lot dangerous.
Right.
We better get to the bottom of this, Chip.
Well, we need to bring in an expert.
Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah, we'll do that. So we've got Ashley Dean coming up at the end of the show today. We're going to be talking about how Iowa farmers can participate in the rootworm tracking program that is happening at Iowa State. And we're going to find out from Ken Ferrie about some early season weed and bug issues. Hey, it's coming on earlier than, I don't know if it's than it ever has, but it is exceptionally early in the season for some of the bug and weed issues that we're dealing with. And then Dan Basse is going to be with us in the next segment. We've got some global political issues that I want to talk about with Dan. Welcome to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. That is Davis. Let's get to the news, buddy.
With Ken Ferrie, though, we're talking just audio, right? I mean, I want to be able to tell who's who.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
It will be fine. I'm sure that somehow, some way, you will be able to figure out which one is Ken and which one's me. Yeah.
Very good. Very good, then. The National Weather Service weather outlook. Heavy rain and severe weather threats across the Arc Latex region today will expand northwards across the northern and central plains tonight. Heavy rain and severe threats will shift eastward into the Midwest and remain across the Arc Latex region on Friday. Heavy snow expected today across the higher elevations of the northern Rockies. I just like saying Arc Latex. I think that's hilarious. But
I know you do. And,
severe weather threats in the Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas sort of region there, everybody, all joking aside.
Right. And it's been kind of a tough situation down there on occasion. Yeah. And there's some storms down there today going through eastern Arkansas right now.
Yep. Well, a Barron's article says, quote, commodities are having their moment. Gold and copper have hit historic highs while agriculture is knocking on the door to join the party. The VIX fear gauge is pointing to almost no fear in equity markets at all, and that's probably not the right attitude for markets facing a knife-edge presidential election, a confusing economy, and a Federal Reserve in two minds about rate cuts. This, according to the Wall Street Journal's Streetwise's James McIntosh. Chip, what's that about when everyone is fearful? I don't remember how that ends. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure
when others
either,
are
but
greedy.
it's the bottom line is you should be a contrarian in a lot of these markets. That's the bottom line of the story.
There you go. Well said. Well, the nearly 940-page House Farm Bill includes provisions for farm food, safety, and nutrition programs with a 5-year reauthorization period. House Republicans are striving for bipartisan support, but face significant Democratic opposition, particularly over proposed freezes to SNAP payments, changes to environmental and conservation programs, and restricting the Ag Secretary's use of Commodity Credit Corporation funding. USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack slammed the House Republican-led Farm Bill just ahead of today's markup. Vilsack argued that the bill relies on unrealistic budget strategies and overpromises improvements to farm programs.
Yeah, this is coming down on party lines. There's no question about it. You've got Sorensen out of Illinois, Craig out of Minnesota, that they come from farm districts. They're Democrats in the House. They come from farm districts, and they've already gone to G.T. Thompson and said, listen, we're going to have to vote no on this because of party issues. It's not about what's in the bill. It's not about what's in the bill. It's all about politics.
Well, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said earlier today that it is important for G7 countries and other economies to show China that it faces a, quote, wall of opposition over its excess industrial capacity, which Yellen says threatens to flood the world with cheap exports. China launched large-scale military drills surrounding Taiwan, a warning shot that will test the island's newly inaugurated president. Taiwan says its forces now on alert in response to Chinese regime military drills encircling the island.
24/7, 365 should be the alert for the Taiwan forces when it comes to keeping an eye on what China's doing.
Hey, and it's going to get a little cheaper to see Nickelback, maybe. The Justice Department, several states anticipated to file an antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation targeting its Ticketmaster unit for alleged market dominance. This lawsuit could potentially lead to significant changes in the live events industry. I would argue significant changes are needed. Chip.
All right. Good stuff, Davis. Thank you so much. Let's bring in Greg Henderson, editorial director of Drovers. How you doing, Greg?
Good morning, Chip. I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. Something is happening, Greg, that frankly does not make a lot of economic sense. Beef exports are doing really well this year, even with beef prices north of $300 a hundred. I don't know how that makes sense.
Well, absolutely. So year-to-date beef exports, just the product is down about 4%, but the value, Chip, is up 6%, and not all of that is due to higher prices. A lot of that is due to demand. And so yesterday, Chip, I attended the U.S. Meat Export Federation opening conference sessions, and the demand equation is just we've got a unique product. Nobody else in the world produces beef like American beef, and so that's why it's in great demand. One of the issues right now is that not only are we dealing with inflation, but the strength of the U.S. dollar is holding beef exports back a little bit. For example, the Japanese yen is 10 to 12% lower than it was last year, so that hurts their borrowing power for the U.S. But Chip, I want to tell you that the Foreign Ag Service Director, Dan Whitley, was there yesterday, and he encourages U.S. To focus more on Africa in the coming years, because by the 2050, when we have 10 billion people, 25% of those people will live on the continent of Africa. Wow. So he says and get this, Chip, 70% of Africans right now are under 30 years of age.
Holy smokes.
A growing market, right?
Yeah, no doubt. If you want to talk about where labor to make stuff is going to be coming from, and that means higher wages, higher income, and more demand for more food in the future. That's where it's at. Good stuff, Greg. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Chip.
All right, Dan Basse is up next from AgResource Company here on AgriTalk.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Empower Dairy from Merck Animal Health, making the way you want to work better than ever before. See how at m-power-dairy.com.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm your host, Chip Flory. Glad that you are with us. Just doing a little bit of behind the scene work there. Sorry. You've now got 100% of my attention, Davis.
Gosh. Okay. Well, I was going to just say something ridiculous, but if I've got 100% of your attention, I should say something really insightful.
Can I add this?
Okay.
Okay. It's quality. That's what we're talking about with Greg Henderson. When he says that the U.S. is offering a unique product to the global buyers of beef.
Mm-hmm.
It is all about quality. And dude, how long have we been talking about this? You go back, is it 5 years to the U.S. China, maybe even 6 years to the U.S. China trade talks? And when a ribeye seems to have turned the table,
Yeah,
and turned the conversation in that whole trade negotiation, and that's not that we're not making that up. That's not over exaggeration. Chinese negotiator sat down at the table, ate a U.S. beef ribeye, and was pretty much blown away.
yep. I remember that. We reported on that meal.
Yeah. And it made a difference. It made a positive, had a positive influence on the way that conversation was going. So it's very interesting. Very interesting. There are a lot of comments flowing to the news, flowing out into the news from Democrats on the House Ag Committee now.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. And it's one of these deals where some of the Democrats have been active in the conversation. Okay? Some have been active I'm looking at Spanberger out of Virginia. She's on the House Ag Committee, and it's not unusual for her to release a statement that has something to do with the Farm Bill negotiation. It's more common, I think, to see something on the Farm Bill from Spanberger than it is to see something from David Scott, the ranking member on the House Ag Committee, about the Farm Bill. Very rarely see anything from Craig out of Minnesota, Sorensen out of Illinois. Although they, as I mentioned, they're both in the in farm districts in those states. Okay,
Yeah, just got a note. I think we have Dan.
Yep, let's go ahead and jump over to that. We've got Dan Basse from AgResource Company. Dan, it's great for you to join us. How you doing, buddy?
I'm really well, Chip, and I hope you are also.
Absolutely. Doing real well. I want to talk about a couple of different things, but I want to start with our friends to the south in Mexico. They've got a presidential election coming up. I believe it's next Sunday on June 2nd.
Correct.
What are you watching in that whole process?
Well, we're kind of watching how it's going to be impacting U.S. trade, and Elmo is likely to move along. We are excited about the next candidates. Both of them are pro-U.S. trade. Their economy is growing strongly. Ag imports from the United States, particularly corn, are at record large. So we're encouraged, and this GMO dispute that's been ongoing will likely be dropped, and so we're all looking for opportunities, and we believe that Mexico is a strong demand driver for U.S. meats and grains going forward.
Even Scheinbaum, who I think I'm saying that name right,
yeah,
who is Obrador's pick and from his party, and Scheinbaum has been a big supporter of Obrador's. But even Scheinbaum has said, some of the things that we've had to deal with over the last year are kind of a personal agenda for Obrador. And I think part of that she was referring to was the GMO dispute, correct?
No, that's right. And, again, as you think about the world that it used to be U.S.-centric, maybe now it's a duopoly with China and the United States, Mexico has chosen to align itself with the United States for obvious reasons. And so there was this personal, I don't want to call it vendetta, but let's just say angst, if you will, against U.S. corn and the GMO issue. But I think Mexico now understands that, U.S. corn is going to be very important to them going forward. And so when you look at the drought that's affected them in the last really 16 months, there's no way for them to get around U.S. corn. And there's not enough non-GMO in the world that they could source their supply from to really feed their population.
Right. There is a choice out there, but if you want that choice, you have to initiate it and contract for that supply before we start putting seed in the ground, and before anybody starts putting seed in the ground, and and that has not happened. And the importers and the end users in Mexico seem perfectly comfortable using GMO product, correct?
Oh, they've been using it just like we have. I don't think anybody down there has grown a third leg or arm. And so I think there's a history, if you will, of GMO being safe, going backwards almost 20 years. So, I think it was something that was a environmental or something that Elmo really got in love with. But at the end of the day, Mexico is going to take, we believe in the year ahead, something like 22 to 23 million tons of corn. To pay up for non-GM would really cost them dearly, and it's not something that is going to help their population.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. Number one issue on their list is the violence down in Mexico. And I don't know if that is going to have a major impact on U.S.-Mexico relations or not, Dan.
Well, we don't think so. Again, I think more and more companies are looking at the Mexican opportunity as they move away from China. You can maybe look at India, you can look at Bangladesh, but when you've got someone like Mexico in your backyard, it just seems to me that relationships like that will get worked out. And so, again, I believe we've got the border issue and we've got all those kind of things, but that'll be ferreted out by the next president of the United States, whether it's Biden or Trump, and we'll see what happens after that. But at the moment, the growth engine of Mexico seems to be very strong and ongoing. And I don't think they want to do anything to disrupt that and change the flow of trade, which is extremely beneficial for Mexico here today.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's talk about what's going on in the veg oil markets, the global veg oil markets. What's the latest?
Well, the one latest thing is that if we're looking at the EU and its crop size is getting smaller, maybe by the tune of 2 to 2.5 million tons. They hit a frost freeze a couple of weeks back, and it's really shot the EU rape market higher. I think that's it's a component that we're watching in terms of feedstocks for renewable diesel. You're also, of course, seeing that the palm oil market has struggled mightily, as we just haven't seen the Chinese demand really take it. So that is what we've been looking at. Though something that's coming into the fore is that India has the monsoon has been relatively dry and inactive so far. So if India has a weather problem that affects some of its oilseed crops, the whole world dynamics in veg oil gets very interesting quickly. But for the moment, UCO, or used cooking oil from China, is about the same price as soybean oil. That tells me that soybean oil is kind of stabilized here, but there's no movement on changing on UCO from China, at least politically speaking. That needs to happen if you want to have a significant rally in the veg oil or the soybean oil market here in the United States.
Yeah. Don't we need to tighten the screws on what defines used cooking oil on the import market?
I think first, Chip, we need to define what a feedstock of used cooking oil really is. Today, there's not a definition that is available. And so it's a kind of a one size fits all. And so if there's a blend of virgin palm oil with maybe 3% of a used cooking oil in it from China, that works. And so this is where we need to define what is used cooking oil, what makes up the characteristics that is important for, I would say, the environment and for California and others. And then we need to have some policement, if you will, on whether or not those standards are being met. Today, it's just the wild, wild west, and we've not even defined what used cooking oil is. And this is why the Chinese are able to put a hot dog and a French fry in a cargo and say it's used, and it meets at least the ability of these plants to bring it in and get subsidy.
Man, I tell you what, when it comes to trade and trade with China in particular, you have to define everything. And defining used cooking oil as used cooking oil isn't good enough in this case. It needs to be much better defined. Dan, thanks for the time this morning, buddy. Appreciate you.
Always good to talk, Chip. Be well. Bye-bye.
All right, Dan Basse, AgResource Company. Ken Ferrie's next. It's time for another Soy Checkoff check-in. Welcome. I am AgriTalk host Chip Flory. Joining me now, Steve Reinhard, Chair of the United Soybean Board. Steve, welcome back to the Soy Checkoff check-in.
Hey, Chips. Good to be on with you.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, every year, farmers get a chance to improve on what they worked on a year ago, whether it worked or it really, needs some improvement. So what has been your experience in the planting season so far this year, Steve?
Well, so far this year, we've got about half of our beans planted and kind of sitting still. We've not moved since Friday a week ago, and getting about a day or two away from heading back out there. And today's overcast and cool and had a little bit of a miss, but so far we've missed the rain. But I think tomorrow will be a definitely closer, and Thursday would be really good.
Okay, Steve, when you think about planting delays, when do you start getting worried about getting beans planted in a timely fashion?
Well, ideally, I think if we had the beans in, last week, I think that would be good. Obviously, we like to have them in as far ahead of, the end of June as possible, so we can optimize that sunlight. But I think we're good. We did take our 2.0 beans out of the rotation, and we'll probably start with that 2.7 as our early bean now, with a little bit delayed planting so that we can get a little more height and things on it there before it starts to bloom and go into the reproductive stage.
We're talking with USB Chair Steve Reinhard here on the Soy Checkoff check-in. Steve, a healthy soil is a must for farmers to produce a healthy crop. What practices are you putting in place to ensure the soil on your farm remains in good shape, in tip-top shape?
Sure. So we've got 2 or 3 things that we like to do. We like the variable rate technology on fertilizer application, and we have our soils are gridded in a 1 acre grid, and that's helped us to be a little more precise in putting the fertilizer where we need it and not over applying where we don't. One of the other things we've done is start utilizing more cover crops, and this has been a challenging year to use cover crops because we've had a little bit of a tough time getting them, terminated so that we don't have them get, overly big. But we like using cover crops, and we like having that living organism there in the soil all the time and pulling those nutrients up. And, we've had a lot of successes with them.
Good deal. What about on the plant breeding side, the genetics that you are using on your farm? It's really helped to improve your yield potential and to use fewer resources in the production, isn't it?
Yeah, that's always been an objective of ours. And I think with the new plant technology genetics out there, it's just been really a great thing, anywhere from being able to use less water to produce more grain. We've been able to use less nitrogen to produce more grain, and that's just been a great thing. And, the soybean checkoff supports research, using things like CRISPR technology, and we work with a lot of different research institutions. So we have new tools and stuff out there to be able to continue to develop those soybean cultivars that, we're going to plant here in the United States. And we're looking for increasing yield, enhancing protein and oil content, nutritional content. We have a great amino acid content in our soybean meal. Even we talk about pest resistance and drought and diseases. I mean, that's an important factor too. If we can keep the plants healthy, they tend to produce more.
Yeah, and producing more and doing it with lower cost, it helps to improve farmers' profit opportunities, correct?
Correct. And, that's one of the things we want to do is help prove that profit opportunity and make sure our U.S. soybean farmers are as profitable as they can be. And, with the research and development that we use the soybean checkoff dollars, to promote that plant breeding research, genomic research, as well as identification of those best management practices is all ways that we can help the U.S. soybean farmer do that.
Fantastic, Steve. Yeah, we're looking for that return, whether it comes from marketing or from the production side. And USB obviously very involved in making sure that we've got the latest and greatest technology out there in the field. Good stuff, Steve. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Chip. And if they want to learn more, they can always go to unitedsoybean.org.
Absolutely. That is Steve Reinhard, chair of the United Soybean Board. And as Steve just said, make sure that you head off to unitedsoybean.org to learn more about the Soy Checkoff. This has been the Soy Checkoff Check-In. Now, let's get back to AgriTalk.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. When news breaks, the news makers talk about it on AgriTalk with Chip Flory.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. Glad you're with us. Joining us now, Ken Ferrie, Farm Journal agronomist from Crop Tech Consulting down in Hayworth, Illinois. You know, I don't do this enough, Ken, when you're on. I'm going to do it right now. Make sure that you guys are checking out Boots in the Field. It's Ken's regular report. You can get to it from agweb.com. You can get to it at croptechinc.com. But whatever you do, find a way to listen to Boots in the Field. It's some very timely and good information in there that you guys need to be thinking about. Ken, it's good to talk to you again, buddy. How you doing?
Doing really good.
Good. Okay, so I want to start with beans, Ken. Take me through this early season on soybeans, the planting season into the emergence. What are some of the things that you're noticing?
Well, you know, it's been a push-pull season all the way through, so there probably isn't as many real early beans planted as guys would want, and then so many of these heavy downpours in between. So we got some pretty good bean stands, but we're having to help a lot of them up after these last, 2.5, 3-inch downpours that we had. So the soybean, are fighting that crust, and that's a challenge, right? When everybody's still trying to finish up planting the first time around, I have to go back and help some of these beans out.
How do you, Ken, how do you make the decision that it's time to go out there with a rotary hoe or something?
Well, we use the term hoe before you know, and in reality is you got to get there when the hoe will do some good. A lot of the time when I get called and I get there, you break a screwdriver trying to get it in the ground, and you can't do anything with the hoe at that point. But as a rule of thumb, guys know where their farms are that get in trouble, what we call our timbered clays, that you get a hard drive and half-inch of rain on it after planting, you just probably better come back with the hoe and break that crust. That's what's given us trouble, is the not half inches of rain. We're getting 2 and 3 inches of rain in pockets. We'll seal that up, before we can get it out of the ground.
Okay.
So
are guys having to replant some
beans? Get the hoe running. Yeah, and that's some of what we're doing today. We're trying to get corn planted, but at the same time making replant calls on both corn and soybeans. But there is going to have to be a round of replanting on soybeans, and probably to some extent less on corn. But we're replanting because of hail, because of crust, because of PPO damage on the beans. Yeah. So there's a lot of mixed bag of things going on this spring.
Okay. You handle those replants 2 different ways. You do it differently on beans than what you do it on corn. Talk about some of those differences.
Yeah. So, we're urging our guys that as they get to the finish line on the first time around planting, we have to make the decisions on replanting corn quickly, because that's the most costly. And when we talk about replanting corn, we have to take out the existing stand. There's just too big a loss to try to thicken a stand up. Guys, I'm down around 10, 18,000 this morning. We were at a field of 18,000. Can I stick some more plants next to it? You can't do that with corn. So with corn, you have to take out your existing stand and start over. There's way too much competition, and it's too hard on yield. If you don't have the woofa to rip it out, you probably have a good enough stand to keep, because you're in trouble there. Soybeans a little bit different. If you interplant into soybeans, you will not increase the yield, but you would improve your weed control. And that's something this year is going to be big, because these weeds are just crazy out here. And you're going to need a good, full, tight stand, to ward off all the weed issues that we fight out there, clear out into August, when all the herbicides have given up.
Okay. Weeds are crazy out there. I've been listening to some of your early scouting reports, Ken. Talk about what you're seeing in fields this year. It's happening earlier than what it normally should be, and guys need to pay attention.
Yeah, I'm just discouraged with the amount of weeds coming through all of our pre-emergence programs. It doesn't seem to matter what it is. No doubt, if you see a skip in the application in the field, your pre's are working. But the amount of water hemp that we're dealing with out here coming through way earlier than we want, we're not even done planting, and the ground's starting to light up with, water hemp. So there's going to have to be some earlier post applications made, and guys are going to have to stay on this, because especially in the PPO arena or the GMO, non-GMO arena, they're going to have to think about things like row crop cultivators and these wide rows and stuff, because this pressure just seems to be breaking everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just weeds, as I understand. You're also finding some bugs that seem to be showing up a few days early.
Yeah, we're actually today spraying for first generation corn borer, non-GMO corn. And by calendar, you'd say, well, that is nuts. That shouldn't happen. But by insect heat units, it's not off pace. We about 840 insect heat units. January 1, you should see first instar corn borer larva. And where we're spraying down by Jacksonville, Illinois, they're at 866. And get a load of this, Chip. Our 11-year average would be around 420, 430, and we're at 866 insect heat units. And a big chunk of that came in March. It's one of the warmest March that we've seen. So your overwintering insects are on that cycle. Just like our wheat was early, we sprayed our fungicides early, our hay is early. The stuff that's, running off of, we want to call it January 1st heat units, which means our rootworm larvae are going to show up early, that type of thing. So kind of tough to stop and spray corn that's at V6 when you're still planting the rest of the crop. But it's been one of those crazy years.
Yeah. Okay. Still planting the rest of the crop. That last 10 or 15% is always the toughest to get planted. I'm not saying that it's late right now, but I look at the weather forecast, and it feels like it's going to get late on some of these acres, especially north of you, in the northern production areas. But is it too soon to be thinking about adjusting the maturity on some of the hybrids? Do we need to make changes?
And it does depend on what you started out with for your full season maturities. Sure. For down here, we're telling our guys to stay the course on their full season hybrids all the way to the 25th. 117, 18 day corn by itself will adjust to about 4 days off of that. So it'll adjust to the planting window that you're putting it in. So I think our guys are going to be able to finish up. But now a lot of guys would, if you haven't got any corn planted, by the end of this week, you're probably going to want to start making adjustments down and shortening that maturity up to make sure you don't have too big of a hassle there, when it comes to the first frost in the fall.
Yeah. That's a tough decision to make, isn't it? To change, to send back seed and take some shorter season variety, because it seems like they're just giving up early in the. I shouldn't say giving up, but they're backing off early in the season. That's hard to do.
Yeah, we have harvested 300 bushel corn planted June 2nd. So we're going to be reluctant to back off, because you lose some of your disease protection, that type of thing. And the other thing is, if you start backing off too hard, then you're going to jam up your fall, right? All the corn's going to be ready at once. But for our guys down here, they are going to have to think about spending some money on dryer gas, maybe, That's something up north that's a common. Down here it isn't. That some of this corn, if you want to stay on time with your fall work, you're probably going to have to put some dryer grass to it.
Right. Okay. Ken, just a couple of minutes left, but I'm going to go. You've seen guys make all kinds of mistakes at this time of the year. It does, and it shows up later at when the combines are rolling. What mistakes do you want guys to don't do this? Prevent these mistakes. What's at the top of the list?
Well, definitely we call it the sins of spring, right? When we get out and we're working this ground wet. And this past week, there was a lot of sins committed down here. We've got a lot of ground that got worked wet in a panic to get it planted. And then we end up with a lot of clods. And then yesterday we had dust storms down here. Were crazy. Unfortunately, those compaction layers that we were laying in to get this thing planted are going to haunt us in July, August. And if we don't take the compaction out this fall, it'll haunt us into the future. As guys think about, trying to go to no-till in some of these climate initiative programs and stuff, doing that on top of compaction is usually a train wreck. And I saw a lot of fields this year that are going to have more than a density layer. They're going to have some pretty substantial compaction. Yeah, nothing we can do about it this spring. We got to get this crop in the ground, but we got to recognize the fact that there's going to be a layer under there, and it has to be dealt with before we would think about taking that into, for instance, no-till corn.
Yep. That's exactly the point I was going to make. Just understand some of the mistakes and some of the issues that you might be creating so that you can get back out there and correct them later. Ken, it's always fun to talk with you. One of these years, we're going to be talking about a beautiful planting season. It's just not this one.
Yeah. This one's got a little bit of everything in it. I'm afraid 2024 is going to go down as the year of erosion too. So wind and water.
Yep, it's something to see. Ken, thanks. That's Ken Ferrie, Farm Journal agronomist and Crop Tech Consulting. We'll be back with more AgriTalk.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Rabo AgriFinance. Discover how local relationship managers and global sector expertise can help you address challenges and seize opportunities. Rabo AgriFinance. Learn more at raboag.com.
Ever since I met your girl, you've been on
Welcome back to AgriTalk. Davis, that conversation with Ken Ferrie, it reminded me that, we joke about it all the time saying, well, no two growing seasons are ever exactly the same. Well, 2024 is setting up to be kind of a very unique, at least start to the growing season here so far. It's it is really something. When you got Ken kind of scratching his head over conditions that he's had to deal with down in central Illinois,
well,
man,
he's no spring chicken in this business. He's about seen it all.
Yes, he has. All right, let's bring the conversation over to Iowa and keep some production conversation going. We've got Ashley Dean. Ashley is an agriculture and natural resources extension specialist at Iowa State University, and she joins us right now. Ashley, welcome to AgriTalk. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. Okay, so bug problems are revealing themselves a little earlier than normal this year. We always say it's never too early to start scouting, but it sounds like you better get out there and take a look and check out what's going on in the corn and soybean fields, right?
Absolutely. I agree. It's never too early to look. If there's seed in the ground or plants emerging, I think it's a great time to look for insects.
Yeah. And some of the bugs are showing up early. It's got to have something to do with the winter that we had. Does that have an impact on bug populations in the following spring?
Oh, certainly. Especially if they are overwintering in, the northern region where we are, where it's kind of harsh to overwinter, if they can successfully do that, which I think a lot of insects did because we had such a mild winter, we can just see more of the normal insects that we see, but also insects that wouldn't typically survive could survive better than usual. So, yep, I'm expecting to see quite a few insects this summer.
Right. And as we were just talking about with Ken, we talk about growing degree day accumulation and how that impacts the development of a corn crop. Well, it impacts the development of the soybean, of the pests out there as well, doesn't it?
Yes. Yep. They develop very similar to plants. They require heat in order to be able to grow. So growing degree days is a pretty good measure for insect development as well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. In Iowa, we've been talking about the issues with rootworms, both the western and the northern corn rootworms over the past few years. It's become a serious pest in the state, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It is our number one insect pest of corn in Iowa.
Okay, and that is measured by what? By bushels lost, by just area of infestation? What is it?
Oh, I think all of the above. They're quite devastating. So the larvae are feeding on the roots, and that feeding alone can cause up to 50% yield loss. But then sometimes those plants lodge and fall to the ground, and then they're very hard to pick up at harvest. So that can exacerbate those losses. But also it's widespread. So pretty much every cornfield in Iowa is at risk, right? Not everyone will have a high infestation, but especially continuous cornfields, which we have quite a few of, just have problems that are year in and year out pretty much.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and when they start feeding on the silks, you know you've really got a problem out there. You are trapping and tracking the rootworm populations in the state. It's the 5th year of this effort. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you're right. This is our 5th year. This is our 6th year for trapping in Iowa, but this is our 5th year of a regional effort. So we have a few goals with this. The first is to get people out scouting, right? We want to get traps in their hands so that they can go out and kind of assess those populations in the field. But also another goal is just to kind of monitor changes over time. So all of the extension and industry folks that are involved with our regional network, we're really interested in seeing how populations are changing over time. So those are our goals. And what we do is we give traps away. So in Iowa, I can give 50 sets of traps to people and have them go out and trap in their fields.
Okay. And these traps are pretty easy to handle. I mean, they're just sticky cards, right?
Yeah. The hardest part is that they're sticky. Everything else is very easy. All you need to do is identify a row in your field that you can put these traps in. And so we recommend putting them a little ways from the field edge because just as a general rule, there are a lot of insects that gather at the edges of fields. So we don't want to sample there. That's kind of a biased sampling. So we get a ways into the field, maybe about 50 rows or so. And then they're just down a single row, put 4 to 6 traps out, and then swap them out weekly. It's a pretty easy protocol.
Okay. If a grower would like to participate in this research, how do they do that? Where do they go?
So they could contact me. So of course, I'm giving away traps for Iowa, but I could certainly put people who are not in Iowa in touch with people who have networks in other states. I could also just send traps to them if there isn't an existing network in their state. So a good way to get a hold of me would be my email, which is adean@iastate.edu. Or you could also visit rootwormipm.org, and there's a bunch of contact information there as well.
Fantastic. Give us that website again, Ashley.
It's rootworm.ipm.org.
Perfect. Ashley, thank you so much for your time and for doing this important work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. Ashley Dean, Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Specialist at Iowa State University. Thank you so much for listening this morning. Come back this afternoon. Pete Meyer from Muddy Boots Ag. And tomorrow morning, it's a free-for-all already.